Hi everybody, it's Joe Cioffi here. Happy New Year. It's Wednesday, January the 2nd, 2019. Joe Rayo will be here in a moment. Just figured I'd jump on a bit early here, get a few things set up. You can see the chat's not working tonight. Oh, we have one whole person on. Okay. Two whole people. Hi, Timothy. How are you? 6 whole people. I guess the notifications are going out slowly tonight. Anyway, I figured I'd jump on a little early. Let me just take care of a couple of things here. First off, those of you who have an Android device, if you haven't already, I'm going to put the link up to my free app on Google Play. Hi, Stephanie Grenier. Nice to see you. Happy New Year to you. So here is the app. If you've got an Android device, it's free, so download and enjoy. If you have an iPhone, I know I've been saying for weeks now, be patient. Tech companies are terrible during the holidays. Apparently, they all disappear from before Christmas till after New Year's. So they'll be getting back in the office tomorrow. So I'm hoping, I'm hoping any day now. It's very, very frustrating. And for those of you who are on the app, there will probably be an update. We've pushed an update out. So there will be some changes and some additions that I think you're going to really like. So just be patient. In the meantime, also for those of you who really are into weather, you might want to consider expanding from the app as well and combining it with my weather platform on Patreon, which is a subscription platform. That's just $2 a month. And actually, if you're on the app, it goes a long way to help supporting it. So just asking $2 a month. The app is free, but if you'd like, you can sign up to Patreon and you'll get a whole bunch more stuff, including live streams that only Patreon members get to see. And I put the link up for that as well. So Joe, as I said, is here tonight. He's just doing his weather, and he should be in here momentarily. Happy New Year to Matt Boder. Nice to see you, Matt. We got to get together one of these days because you and I are close to each other. So one of these nights, one of these days, or one of these nights. We ought to meet up. Jason Schaefer, Scott Briller on board from my YouTube live stream on also Patreon members, as we also have Ann Decato on. Hi to you, Jason Barry, Danny Nankumar, Robert Matthew Policasto. Hope you're enjoying your Nor'easter mugs, your Nor'easter mug and your Boxing Day Blizzard mug. Bob Mason, Barbara Bender. And so far, that's it. So, Rory Prager Brown, Happy New Year. So, collective Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. I know the winter weather lovers, the ones that are particularly rabid about having snow every day from November 1st to May 1st, know that I have said many times that that is rather unrealistic. And what ho! What ho! He's here. I figured I'd do some business ahead of time. Should also mention, by the way, that next week, either Tuesday, I'm thinking either Tuesday or Wednesday, we're going to have Dr. Judah Cohen on my YouTube channel. So I'll let you know, because I do put a post up every day before right as I'm going live on YouTube, so that you can switch over. But either Tuesday or Wednesday, and he basically is, let's call him the father of the stratospheric split, with the polar vortex up there, trying to figure out what's going on up where planes fly and how it impacts our weather here on Earth, and it will probably have some implications in our weather over the next several weeks. So he's going to be with us either Tuesday or Wednesday. At least that's the plan at the moment, and we'll let you know. You had a nice New Year?
It was boring, and let me tell you, no, when it's boring, it's.
No, you know why I laughed, Joe? Because I have to tell you, New Year's for me has always been go to work, come home, go to bed.
Right.
I have no interest at all in watching the ball drop. I have no interest in being up for champagne. I just want to go to sleep. And I said yesterday that New Year's really should be renamed as the annual worldwide personal reinvention day. a day in which everybody tries to personally reinvent themselves,
Right.
only to realize that when they wake up on January 2nd, they're the same tiresome person they were on December 31st.
Well, to tell you the gosh honest truth, I mean, I spent a lot of the afternoon just lying on my bed, turning on the television set, watching part of the sci-fi Twilight
Zone
marathon, and also the Honeymooners marathon, which also is running concurrently. And so that's how I spent my day, just watching old television shows from 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, I worked on New Year's Eve and drove home in that driving rain. Thankfully, there were very few people on the road, and also, New Year's Day. I was here yesterday, and now, of course, we're here today. Doesn't look like this weather system for tonight, Joe, is any big deal.
No, if you remember last week on Christmas Eve morning, some of you who were, let's say, in the northern regions of our viewing area, let's say north of Interstate 287, northern and western New Jersey, you woke up to some wet snow, either on your deck or maybe on your grass or maybe on the top of your car, but not on your driveway or on any of the roadways. And it's a possibility that you may see something very similar to that come tomorrow morning. Interestingly, and we were talking about this on your YouTube show, Joe, 1 year ago tomorrow.
Oh yeah, let's bring that up.
We were watching a storm that was bringing very heavy snowfall and near blizzard conditions. And again, that's it. You had a tough time remembering that, but that was.
I'm still having a tough time remembering it. I'm having such a tough time that I actually put up the map for. I put up the wrong date, so the wrong year. I was trying to look at a map in the future. That's not how this tool works. Okay.
Did you ever hear, by the way, the two psychics who got together one afternoon, and it was during a snowstorm, and one of them looked out the window
and said,
"Doesn't this remind you of the blizzard of 2025?"
Nice. All right. So this was last year, folks, and we had now. I mean, just to show you the difference, and also the fact that it's striking how we talked about this, how a number of times we get one extreme of weather in 1 year, and then the very next year you wind up almost at the opposite end. We're not quite there, but it was very cold. Those first few days of January last year, you had temperatures at I don't know if this is the latest, but this was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday, January 3rd, that were barely back to the 40-degree mark down into southern Georgia and northern Florida.
See, I was working the morning shift on New Year's Eve last year, and it was bitter cold coming in that morning, and it was bitter cold all through the day, and of course that night at the ball drop, second coldest night for the ball drop, 9 degrees above zero.
Right.
And the cold just lingered into the opening days of 2018, and come the 3rd of January, interacting with a developing storm off Florida, which is...
Yeah, you can see it here. This was on the 3rd, and I'll just keep moving the maps along, and you can watch this. I'm going to go back and thankfully with Facebook and I can just go back and look it up there to see exactly what I posted with this. But you got another cold high that came down. This storm really just wrapped up into a very intense storm system. The pressure got down into the 950s, and New York City only got about. This must have been tight. The back edge must have been very tight because New York City got 10 inches out of this.
You know what I remember now in thinking about this? That that morning, there was snow, but it really wasn't sticking for whatever reason, or there really wasn't all that much. And a lot of people were saying they blew it. The forecasters have been warning us of a big storm. Meanwhile, we were talking about, I remember here at FiOS 1, we were talking about that the main thrust of this storm was still coming during the afternoon, and we were talking even about thunder snows. And sure enough, I think right after the noon hour, all of a sudden, it began to snow to beat the band. Lightning, thunder, 2 to 3 inches per hour. That was the main part of the storm. It waited until the afternoon, but meanwhile, a lot of people in the morning were saying, the naysayers.
You know, oftentimes I've noticed this happen a lot. Depending on the timing of the storm during whether it's in the day or in the evening, it seems as if a lot of folks kind of misinterpret the time.
Right. For
example, if we're forecasting snow for say the daytime on Friday, okay, right, or Thursday, you're forecasting snow for the daytime on Thursday. People will, and you might specifically say that we don't expect the snow to start until about 8 or 9 a.m. I can't tell you, but I guarantee you have a bunch of people that will wake up tomorrow morning, will wake up in the morning and say exactly what you just said. Where is it? It's not here. Well, usually because it's not supposed to be here. I think you know, I don't think we get the start and end times off by very much.
Right.
But I do find that a lot of people don't pay attention to that. Not the folks the folks that are watching weather closely, like those that are on our live streams. They're obviously interested. They're paying attention.
Right.
But the general public, I think, just kind of loses it for some reason. They only hear, maybe a tenth of what you say.
Right. Right. Now this is Thursday, January 4th. And we were talking about how this got started. When did it get started? On the 3rd?
Yes.
Because
this is Thursday afternoon.
Right.
And it's, I can see from the observations here, you've got heavy snow falling. I guess that must be Newark. And I'm not sure if that's down in central Jersey, if that's Trenton or Lakehurst. But you do have heavy snows, those 4-star snows and moderate snows all around. So it must have been, here's...
Well, here, I mean, the positioning of the storm is... It's passing just south and east of the so-called benchmark, the 40-70 benchmark.
Right.
And normally you would say that when a storm is in that position that we'd be on the edge and wouldn't really see all that much in terms of activity. But on the other hand, look at the pressure, 962 millibars. That was
right, and also the temperatures, which were only in the upper teens and low 20s.
Right.
So the snow was probably was powder.
Like 15 or 18 to 1.
Oh yeah, so
normal 10 to 1 ratio.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of storms not follow the conventional rules that we thought worked back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Storms that track. You think they're too far offshore, and yet, because of whatever's going on in the upper air, you see the precip shield is perhaps larger, extends back further north and west, or the opposite is true. Sometimes they're closer, but they're very, very tight, and sort of where the back edge is like a wall,
right, and
you walk 2 miles and you go from flurries to a foot, which we've seen that happen too. But
look at that, 950.
952 is the isobar. 950. Is the lowest pressure. I mean, that's basically a Category 3 hurricane with a 950 pressure. I don't think it got any deeper than that, or I could be wrong. Nope, it actually got a little weaker. So 950 was it. So for those of you who I've seen a few posts on my page and some comments who apparently think that winter we didn't have a winter last year. We did, and it was a lot more active than you give it credit for. Okay.
Now, a lot of people were saying that storm, the one that we're talking about for January 3rd and 4th, that was going to be the one big storm of the whole winter season, especially toward the end of February. Everybody was throwing in the towel, and then came the month of March. And we had the 4 Easter.
Yes.
Of March.
By the way, here's the radar right now, and you can see the huge gap in between the two weather systems. The northern stream system that is running across the Great Lakes and into upstate New York is staying completely separated and separate from the southern stream moisture that is running out across Virginia and North Carolina. The fact that they're staying separate, Joe, means that you're really not going to get very much out of this.
No. We're talking about maybe a few hours later tonight of some rain or wet snow.
And right now there's nothing on the radar nearby, so you wonder where it's all going to come from. It'll probably bubble up to some degree.
Something like that after midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. But again, nothing to get excited about. Tomorrow morning, some of you may wake up to some whiteness, but it'll be mostly on the grass, and I frankly don't drive on the grass. But on the roadways and on the streets and most sidewalks and most paved surfaces, it will likely be wet. Not
right, and down in places like New Jersey, along the immediate coast, Long Island is a little tricky. Just beware. I think if you're driving during the early morning hours, just watch your temperatures. There could be a few slick spots. If anything winds up gelling up on the radar, which right now, as I said, is absolutely quiet. In the meantime, you've got a lot of rain that goes back through Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, southern Arkansas. There's snow on the northern fringe of this. You've got freezing rain on the northwest side in Oklahoma and parts of Texas. This rain is going to be part of a weather system that's going to be problematic for later Friday night and Saturday.
And that means that this upcoming weekend, the first weekend of 2019, looks to be a 50-50 weekend. It looks like the first half, as Joe just alluded to, will likely be wet, rainy. I again stress that word rainy. It does not look like snow for very many people, if any snow at all. And Sunday, things will begin to clear out and dry out, and that'll lead us into a dry start to next week.
So I brought the NAM up, the new NAM, so it'll take us through through at least into the weekend. It's not out too far, but far enough. One thing I'm noticing, Joe, that it seems like the NAM is overdone. It's got some radar echoes across Pennsylvania and New York State for 9 o'clock this evening. We just looked at the latest radar, and there's nothing there. So I wonder whether the NAM just has it way overdone with whatever it's showing for tonight. Then this kind of moves out. We should see sunshine developing during the morning tomorrow. Should be a nice day. I think Friday could be quite the nice day, maybe up around 50.
Right.
And then you can watch the next wave that comes out Friday night. Well, this is now during the day Friday, so I'm rushing it a bit. But it gets in here. Looks like the NAM brings it in a little faster. It's got it raining here by 1 in the morning on Saturday. And it has, this is now at 10 o'clock in the morning. It looks like there's a shot of rain that moves through overnight into the morning hours, and then some leftover back edge rain for later in the morning and the afternoon. Maybe if the speed is right, maybe the worst of the rain is over with by mid to late morning Saturday, and then we just sit in cloudy skies and drizzle for the rest of the day.
I could take that. I could deal with something like that as opposed to a flat out, straight out entire day's worth of rain. Although again, midday and afternoon, just a lot of gray clouds and low-hanging clouds and spotty leftover mist and drizzle, which is not the nicest thing to look at, but still better than a day-long period of steady and possibly heavy rain.
Now, as far as the longer term is concerned, I'm going to jump off to the GFS model, and given the time of year, and given the fact that just a year ago, right around the same date, we had a major snowstorm with very cold air all the way down into Florida. We've got the exact opposite here, where we don't actually, on Saturday morning, it's not only, make sure I got the right map up. Yep, there's no snow anywhere. In fact, those areas in the Great Plains that were double digits below zero are actually going to get rather mild Friday and Saturday. That low pulls out. We do get a glancing shot of colder air that comes in for Sunday night and Monday. Kind of sets up this next weather system for Monday night into Tuesday. Looks more like a glorified warm front, cold front scenario.
Right.
Out
it goes.
Another quick shot of cold air. Doesn't last too long. Maybe this one lasts a little bit longer because it goes to the end of the week. Then another. Now, this is where I start to question the models in a big way, because it has a fairly wrapped up low up in Iowa there, going into the western Great Lakes. And we've seen the models do this from time to time lately, where it wraps up these big lows and they wind up not being there. Remember, there was supposed to be a 976 low in the Gulf of Maine on this Friday,
right?
And that's what the European had. That's not happening. So I'm kind of questioning. I'm going to be very dubious about the models going forward, in particular because of everything that's going on in the stratosphere with this big polar vortex split. I might as well show everybody that if you didn't see it on play out before, but we'll show you again here. So remember, we're looking up where planes fly, all right, and going back, just going back to, I want to make sure everybody can see this, and I'm going to just make it a little smaller. All right, so that's a much better view. So where you go up about 6.5, 7 miles up, where everything's sort of a bit smoother. You've got one low and one high, but this is that polar vortex splitting in the stratosphere. It splits in two, and it's very, very interesting. Part of it goes to Europe, Joe. Part of it goes back into eastern Canada, and then it just settles over North America as we go through the 2-week period. And I'm thinking that when you allow for a 10-day to 2-week lag time for all the chess pieces to move around, you know, I'm thinking we're going to get into a much colder, much more active winter pattern in the next several weeks. It might take, we may have another week of transitioning, and then maybe another handful of days after that, you know, this sort of stair-step decline until we get to wherever it is we're going to go with this. But this, in theory, is a very bullish pattern for winter weather in the eastern United States.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we may have to wait until the latter days of January into February. And somehow I got the idea that February, and you mentioned this on the YouTube show, how amazingly stark contrast between what we were seeing a year ago versus what we're seeing now. February last year was a very mild month, relatively speaking. Who's to say that now this year February might end up being a very cold month?
Could be.
It might be a stretch.
Also, I think I think we're going to see progressively colder shots of air going forward once we get through this weekend and into the first part of next week. Each one will have a bit more staying power. Each one might be a bit colder than the prior one.
Right.
And I also think that at some point, once we get to mid-month and beyond, we might start to see more credible chances for snow pop up. In terms of maybe something really cold, we're going to just have to wait to see how this whole polar vortex split plays out.
Well, you see how things are right now. We could have very easily have had a more significant or more substantial storm tonight if the two branches of the jet stream connected. They did not. Maybe, just maybe, with a more prolific northern stream later in the month or into February, that we'll begin to see more energy and the better chance of seeing some teleconnections take place and more dynamic weather taking place again later in the month or maybe on into February. We'll have to wait and see. Can't tell about teleconnections now because
the government shut down.
The maps that we deal with or the maps that we depend on are not available because of the shutdown.
So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way.
Right. We're going to guess.
We're going to guess. Justin Durso says he was soaked to the core on Times Square in New Year's Eve.
Oh, you're a braver man than
Why?
Either of us.
Yeah, I've never done. I had so many opportunities when I worked at WPIX to go there after the newscast was done because we would cover it.
Right.
And I never wanted to.
Now, Pix 11 is at 42nd and 2nd.
Correct. So I'd have
time,
to
time
5 blocks away.
Time locked at five blocks.
5 blocks away in a press pass.
Right.
But I never really wanted to. I love the fact that I could get on the road with nobody on it.
Yeah.
And actually, the funny stories were, for me, there were, in the early 2000s, I would normally work New Year's Eve. I didn't care because New Year's was not my thing. So I would normally work New Year's Eve and also work the night show, and then I would stay overnight. He would put me up at a hotel on 42nd between 2nd and 1st in Tudor City, and I would, I'd be done with the show at 11 o'clock. I would go to the hotel, and not sleep for 5 hours because I just was never good at that, and I would wake up at 4. Now the funny part about it, on New Year's morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 2nd Avenue, most nights, very, very minimal traffic. But on New Year's night, because there's all these restaurants, there would be a ton of traffic. It would almost be like it was the middle of the day.
Right.
And inevitably, I'd be standing on the corner. There would be 2 or 3 cars or cabs that would pull up and stop. The back doors would fling open, and something resembling a human being would just fall out into the street, just, in their own sick. I hate to be descriptive, but it was just every year like clockwork. It's like, they obviously overdid it, and I used to think to myself, it's you do this to yourself on purpose? It was just never my thing. I never got it. I never understood it. So but it was kind of funny for me to watch this show. Almost every year I would get the same show on 42nd and 2nd. People coming home from parties, spending time at all the restaurants up and down 2nd Avenue, and they'd be sick as a dog. Just absolutely sick as a dog.
The reason why you'd go to a hotel, you'd be working the morning shift as well?
Yeah, so I would have a short turnaround.
Right.
So rather than, I couldn't go home.
Right.
Because by the time I'd get home, I'd have to get up to come back to work.
Right.
So they put me up for the night, which was great. But the problem is, I don't sleep very well, when I'm not in my own bed.
Right.
I think most people are like that.
Right.
So I never really would sleep. By the time I would fall asleep, it would feel like it was about 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the morning, and then I'd have to wake up at 4.
Yeah.
But those were the days past.
What do you say? The HRRR shows
nothing. Correct, Jason Barry. The HRRR has actually shown nothing all day today and tonight. Not a flake, not an ice pellet. Keeps everything separate. And you know what? Looking at the radar, I think that may very well be.
What did the 3 kilometer NAM show?
It showed a little bit of precip, but again, nothing to speak of.
Right.
But the HRRR all day, that model. It's funny. It's when you look at it to use it, it doesn't work. So when you decide to ignore it, it works. And it's sort of the broken clock right twice a day theory. But this was never going to be a big system anyway. How much rain do you think for Friday night into Saturday, Joe?
Not a tremendous amount. Maybe a quickie ½ inch or 3/4 of an inch at most. Maybe they may not even issue any kind of a advisory for flooding or whatever. Again, it's moving very, very rapidly, moving very fast.
My cousin is on.
Joseph
Massaro.
Oh, hi, cousin.
Joe and
Wait a minute. Let me do this correctly. He said, "You."
No,
cousin Joe.
Joe. Well, because everybody in my family's name is Joe, but Joe and I go back. He's 8 months older than me.
Okay.
So basically, from infancy to about 5 or 6 years old, we were connected.
Okay.
So it was.
Well, from a
we have
meteorological
we have a
teleconnect.
Yeah. No, we have he and I have a very special cousin brother connection type of thing.
All right.
So it's always
nice.
It always puts a smile on my face to see my cousin Joe on my live stream. Of course, he may have come on early and already shut me off, so he might have missed all of this. So if someone that knows him could tell him that I've been talking about him, he might come back and listen. Did I watch the Honeymooners on Pix during New Year's mornings when I couldn't go to sleep? I think maybe on some years I might have had the TV on. It's possible. But most of the time I would just kind of try to doze off.
I was very surprised. There were a few of my very favorite episodes that they did not run. Of course, they have to run the news between 4:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, which puts an end temporarily to all the Honeymooners thing. And then they went to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But they didn't run one of my favorite shows, the $99,000 Answer. I love that episode of the Honeymooners. They didn't run it this year.
You mean the one where he bribes a dust?
He bribes a dust.
A dust a bribe.
And doesn't know who Stephen
Foster
is.
And that question's for you. It was a beautiful
waning crescent and Venus alignment. Yeah, we had that early this morning. So if you were up and about, I just don't. In my younger days, I would get up for something like that. I'm not that young anymore. I'm sorry to say. Also, the other problem where I live, I'm surrounded on 3 sides by 50 to 75 foot trees, and that doesn't do well if you're trying to see something low in the eastern sky from where I am. I literally would have to get into my car and travel a couple of miles to the elementary school, which is up on a high hill and overlooks the eastern sky. But I just don't have that energy anymore, especially on the day after New Year's morning.
Just have to see. I've said before that people try to be a little less emotional about this. It's weather. It's just snow. Okay, everybody take a breather here. Jason Kaplan, I think we're going to have some chances between now and the end of January. It is January 2nd. Okay, it just everybody relax.
You got 29 more.
The snow lovers are hanging off the edge of the bridge already. It's just really, it's
but
just
you know,
insane.
you have no right to do that. Now, as I mentioned on Joe's YouTube show earlier, we've had at least at Central Park, and I'm sure for everywhere else too, we've had 6 consecutive winters where we have gone above normal in terms of snowfall. I think I made the calculation at home, Joe. We've had like 150% of normal in terms of snow accumulations these last 6 years. We're overdue for a below normal winter.
Oh, I've been saying that on and off since back in the fall.
I don't understand this. I mean, have you not had your fair share of snow?
Well, look, they didn't grow up the youngins in this board, because you and I are not part of the youngins. You and I grew up through, we grew up and came of age during the snow drought years of 1970 to 1999, when, and I've always said this, it's amazing when you talk to people that are our age, but not in the weather world. They all will tell you how it snowed so much more when they were younger.
No.
And the reality is that it's exactly the opposite. That's one of the, whenever I do my library talks, Joe, that's one of the first things I get to when we do the winter weather focus. I always ask that question because I'm curious as to the perceptions, and I think it has to do with the natural tendency for people to remember everything that makes them feel good.
Right.
And in general, even if you don't like snow, it usually is connected in your mind to a better time, or a time when you had when you were younger, when you enjoyed yourself. Maybe you remember going on sleigh rides as a kid. Maybe you remember playing out in the snow. But in reality, the folks in the last 20 years have gotten absolutely spoiled. And the other thing I would say is, if we ever do get a winter where the snowfall for the winter is really subpar, I will, and I don't even think you would take this bet because I'm right on this. I guarantee you would see stories about how the lack of snow in the Northeast or in the Mid-Atlantic states, or both at the same time, is a sign that climate change is now means no snow on infinitum.
Right.
This is why I think it's so important that you, whatever it is, just be very skeptical. Skepticism is good. Read between the lines of what you're reading when it comes to this weather stuff, because a lot of it is written in such a simplistic way to get a headline, that there's most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time in the general media, there is very little science behind whatever, and data behind whatever the person, whatever the article or the story is about.
I mentioned on your YouTube show a couple hours ago, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Each one of those decades, 10 years, each one of those 10-year periods, there were, on average, 2 above normal snow years at Central Park. In the decade of 2000 to 2010, and in the current decade, we have averaged 7 above normal years. All of a sudden,
there's only been one below average season, 11-12, and that was with a La Nina, or I always get it confused. I can't seem to remember. I think 11-12 was a big La Nina year. So that's the only subnormal season. Right. Even the super El Nino year of 15-16 produced above average snowfall in New York anyway. That doesn't go for everybody. Every area is a bit different, and there's a lot. You're going to see a lot of variation, but the fact remains that the normals over the last 20 years are going to go, when they get recalculated in 2020. The new 30-year normal for New York City is probably going to go from 20, where it was in the year 2000, to 25, where it was in the year 2010, to probably 30, or maybe even a little over 30 for the new normals that come out in 2020. We've been on this uptrend, but you're right. If we ever really get if we get a subnormal year, there's going to be gnashing of teeth everywhere.
People, and you know what? What I really hate is the people who, when they talk about climate change and they talk about global warming and its influence and effects, when we get a big year with a lot of snow, they say, well, this is due to climate change.
Right, exactly.
And then when we don't have any snow,
it's due to climate change.
It's due to climate change. You can't have it both ways.
Apparently you can, because even the people who write those stories, They don't even think it through. They just don't. Anyway, we got to go because we both have stuff to do at the top of the hour. Fios 1 News, Long Island, New Jersey for me. Lehigh Valley, Hudson Lower for Mr. Rayo. We will be back tomorrow. Judah Cohen, either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. We'll let you know. So we'll see you then.
Bye.